Hi, I'm Gordon Burkelt from Filmmaker U. At Filmmaker U, we create courses for film professionals to deepen and diversify your existing skill set. You can learn more at filmmakeru.com or follow us on Twitter at filmmaker_u. Every week, we interview film professionals to discuss their work, and this is made possible by our sponsors, OWC. For more information on how they can assist you in your filmmaking needs, go to owcdigital.com. Now, this week, I'm joined by Tommy Maddox-Upshaw, ASC, Director of Photography for the Snowfall, Empire, and most recently, The Man Who Fell to Earth. Welcome to the show, Tommy.
Thanks for having me. How you doing?
Pretty good, thanks. Now, you're working on The Man Who Fell to Earth right now, and that's part of, or it was already made back in the 70s with David Bowie, and it's based on a very popular book. So how do you take in that original to make sure that the fans of the original will love this one? How do you approach working with the directors and the producers to come up with a look that sort of respects the old style? But
the irony is that The Man Who Fell to Earth was originally lensed by my man Tony Richmond, ASC, BSc, and he and I used to work together. He's a older cinematographer. I talked to him a little bit about the show. Our show is about a continuation and the search of where did Bowie's character, Thomas Newton, go at the end of the movie, and why didn't he return to Anthea, which is the home planet. And so with that, the original is very much a dramatic sci-fi, and we keep in that vein of existence. And Chiwetel Ejiofor is the new alien, and Naomi Harris is in it, Clark Peters, Jimmy Simpson from Westworld. And what I try to do is just really try to lean into the drama of what the emotional beats are like. If you ever watch the original, it's kind of like this weird movie, but it's actually very dramatic in terms of the aliens' relationship to human beings, and certain human beings in particular, and what human beings respond to him. So now it's like the new phase of, we try to find out what happened to Thomas Newton, and then we kind of have to see what choices this new alien makes in terms of dealing with Thomas Newton. And, if he possibly finds him, when he finds him, like, what is these choices? Like, we got to get home to Anthea. And what's the plan of action, and why did you leave us? You know what I mean? So we'll find out. It's a fun, I call it a sci-fi drama. I really, really hope people respond to some of the choices, because I at least I did the first 4 episodes, 1 through 4, and I'm doing a good part of 10, the conclusion as well. So I just hope people like some of the dramatic choices that I leaned into for this sci-fi show. So it definitely pays homage, and it continues the story of, if you ever watch the whole movie, you'll realize that there's always been an open door to a continuation of the movie itself.
So when you're getting the script, like, how do you make notes on the scripts, or do you start to sort of work things out on the script, or how do you figure that out for yourself?
So for me, my process, I usually have to read the script twice over, before I make notes. And I start to have ideas. And then upon my 3rd reading, I just blurt out whatever I feel. I write it down. I handwrite a lot of my first passive notes. I get like, my wife will tell you I have all these different notepads, yellow, that you just take notes on. And I just splurge it out. Then I start to find materials that connect with my notes. Then I organize the notes. Then I read the script again, and then I present it to the director. So after like the 3rd pass, I'll make a pass to, present to a director. If I already have the job, then I'll show this PDF. If I'm interviewing for the job, I may read it twice, and I'll make an abbreviated form of certain ideas, and then I'll bring it in on the presentation, and I usually kind of take it back at the end of it. If it's just an interview, it's just one of those things. Over the years, I've learned I need to just hold on to certain ideas. I think other filmmakers should learn from that as well. After you present something, make sure you hold on to your intellectual ideas, because you don't want somebody else to get the check that with your ideas that are being passed around.
Wow. Yeah, for sure. Now, you said you're a member of the ASC, and the ASC is very much about educating, and sharing knowledge. So when
Mhm.
you're working on a film, do you bring on young, you know, cinematographers into your camera crew, or how do you go about helping educate the next generation?
So one thing I've always done, even before I joined the American Society of Cinematographers, is that I've always tried to keep that door open. And when the opportunities present themselves, I do try to invite people, young people in, when they have time, when I have time that's legally available, because sometimes, due to sensitivity of the studio or something, they may not be allowed to be involved in certain aspects of it. But during early camera tests and looking at lens choices, camera tests, shooting camera tests, I try to involve, an intern or somebody that has an hour or two to come check it out. Look at these lenses, look at the camera body. This is my process, looking at, the lenses, and then, it's like lenses, camera choice, and then I move on to like, how does that help the full on, the full on overall ideas of what I'm trying to put out there.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my early process after I've gotten the job. Then I try to find out things that interpret my visual ideas and aesthetics for the emotional arc of the show visually.
Mm-hmm.
What's going to best convey that? So I always have a certain process. And if you take a look, you ask my crew from Prentice Smith, Alex Lim, my two first ACs I've worked with now for years, I always have a certain process of doing things, but I don't choose the same lenses usually ever. This job, Panavision has been gracious. Panavision, Panavision Woodland Hills in London, and they help design lenses for this show.
Oh wow!
Large format lenses, or to my specs, is something that they've been doing for certain filmmakers, which is great. So I'm shooting large format spherical and large format anamorphic, specifically designed by Dan Sasaki and Guy McVicker out of Hollywood. Not Hollywood, I keep saying out of Panavision Woodland Hills. Well, no, Panavision Woodland Hills.
Yeah.
They were designed there. I did my test there that I told you with the lens choices and all that. And Alex Kurtzman, the director and producer of The Man Who Fell to Earth, we looked at stuff that we like, movies that we like, images, and then I found lens recipes that we evolved to what we have now. So, and those guys at Panavision Woodland Hills, Guy McVicker and Dan Sasaki, had my lenses shipped on over to London. And now they're being shipped here to Spain, where we're doing our Spain portion of the show.
How do you go about designing a lens? Like what? Because I've shot stuff, but I've never been at the level where I'm like, I need a lens that's specially made. So like, what do you look for? How do you just explain what you need to people?
So the way about it is like, I wanted to try large format for the first time on this, and I wanted to know what the pros and cons were. And Guy McVicker on this show at Panavision Woodland Hills walked me through the different variables of large format versus Super 35. And I'm a Sony guy, so I love shooting the Sony Venice. I shoot it all the time. I've shot it all over the world for years now. Mm-hmm. And I can do 6K, 4K, 3.5. So one thing I love is that, okay, so I'm going to use the Venice because it gives me a certain amount of latitude. But optically, I don't necessarily need the sharpness, because I can shoot at 2500 ISO. It does well, base noise level, all that. But I resonated with the director, Alex, and I resonated with certain movies of like the 90s, because the drama that we feel for the movies that we referenced for this show had a certain level of drama. It wasn't about it being a crisp, clean sci-fi situation. We didn't want a sci-fi procedural show. So I wanted a level of dramatic, kind of recall of certain movies from the past I love, while I still had sharp 6K optics. Mm-hmm. So I literally ideas from 3 different lenses while still having really good performance. If I don't decide to flare the lens a certain way, then that's what we were looking for. And a lens that has a certain speed and also a certain size, so then it doesn't slow me down in terms of lens changes and using filtration. So it's like all these things on my notepads again, what I'm looking for to execute so I can have certain type of visual performance certain type of speed in terms of like T-stop, and then also speed for my assistants to be able to swap lenses quite easily. So between the anamorphic, I shot G-series anamorphic on the show that were expanded to 6K. And then I shot these things called the Panavision varials. And I had that recipe into what I wanted in terms of like a certain aesthetic. So it took a process, man. It was a couple of months of like, let's try this out. No, not that. That's too much. Oh, this is too much. Oh, I like that. I like this about it. I like that about it, But Alex and I, we walked through this process starting in January. I didn't even get on a plane to go, to get to London when we shot the first part of the show until March. But Alex and I we've had a great time collaborating, and he was a part of the choices, and he's very much a visual guy. Alex did like, he does a lot of the Star Trek series. He wrote the first two for J.J. Abrams, and Alex is, has done a bunch of other TV shows, and good guy all around. I've had a really positive experience with him thus far. Still got like 2 more months, so yeah. But he's been nothing but great.
Are you going to be addicted to getting lenses now made for every project? You're going to be like,
oh man, yeah, it does become kind of addicting. I take my hat off to somebody like Bradford Young, who has his own. He's partnered with somebody for the Tribes series, and you got to take kudos off to him, because there's always a recipe of certain things that you like, and certain stories call for certain type of optics. And one of my early teachers being Matty Lebetique, ASC, he taught me that early on. Matty doesn't use the same lenses, not for much anything. Between him and some other guys like Daniel Pearl and Paul Cameron, and Malik Saeed, like these guys who I've followed for years now, I get to talk to them. The reason why I resonate so much with their stuff is because they choose optics differently to tell different stories, or different music videos or anything like that. And it's like, oh, I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying. I see why I resonate with certain movies at certain times, because optics is playing, film stock and optics are playing a certain way, so it's like, it's going to be hard not to really want to have lenses designed for each show that I do. And maybe it'll work out, there's a way to do it. There's certainly a way to do it. There's certain other camera houses that are doing it as well. So
now, do you usually so like whenever I talk to cinematographers or colorists, I ask, do you guys have a lookbook or a particular artist that you like to follow? Because they tend to look at the painters or photographers. And is there a particular artist we should check out?
Man, I mean, one that I definitely resonate towards is like Alex Webb, still photographer. There's Altez Roy, Robert de Carava, there's Jonathan Green, painter, of course, like the Caravaggio and Goya's Dark Period. Jacques-Louis David, who did this painting, I think it's called The Death of Lumet, I really love. There's a lot. I resonate even with music. I even put music in my visual presentations sometimes, and reference songs about the emotional. It's like there's a singer named Donny Hathaway that sings these soulful songs from like the 60s and 70s that just resonated on this one show I was up for, and I do it often. Like I just grab from anywhere, but I make this lookbook in terms of what I think the visual arc is, and I give it to the director after I've gotten the show, and then I'll see what the production designer has, and I start to melt it, and I see where their palette's going for, and with the colorist, I'm like, hey, our LUT should lean kind of this way, because the production designer and wardrobe are going to have stuff that complement each other, so we don't want to make it monochromatic through the LUT. We need to have something that accentuates it. We need to have something that in the LUT we have a certain level of, I like to call it color twisting, color science, and certain contrasts at different story points along the arc that I want the LUT to complement their work as well. I shouldn't be just a rogue agent and have my own agenda, but I really involve them in the camera test when I'm doing the LUTs, and I do a couple of passes on the LUTs. Guys like Pankaj, who's at Technicolor, and Paula Leah at Picture Shop have been great guys in my career, and we have a good time doing stuff together. And they help devise the LUTs either before or after the show is going. But that's kind of been my thing. Like, you really see it in Snowfall. I really got a grasp of it with Pankaj, who was on the show before I was, but then I really got to sit down with him, and Elliot and I, who did Snowfall together, like really got a hand on the LUTs. I just got crazy though. I like to use LUTs and then manipulate color even on set, just to like try to see what throw against the wall, see what sticks,
Your DIT must love you. He's like, no, change it here, change it there.
Yeah. So it's funny. I've gotten a system down. So the DIT usually kind of just lays the LUTs on, and then I use the DIT to just cover myself in terms of checking bottom end exposures and highlights to make sure I'm retaining stuff. If there's a problem, referencing things, but I don't do live color grade.
Yeah.
It's just something I rather, because my Final Colors has created my LUT, which is a monitoring LUT, then they understand the science behind the LUT because they created it. They understand the parameters. So I know if my LUTs are devised a certain way.
Yeah.
By my Final Colors, then I can get away with a lot.
Now, when I was looking at your IMDb, your first work was in the early 2000s, which means that you probably learned on film. And back then, when you did color, it was more color timing, right? Like you just steps. So now that colorists are such an important part of the cinematographers team, how do you work with them to ensure that that you're getting the look you want from the start with LUTs and what have you, but also in the post process?
I mean, it all starts in prep. I mean, even back then when I shot film, I would have examples of stuff when I was coloring, they had the best light and then the final color for things. I would still involve them in the early process of what I was trying to go after. And then I would ask questions like, so where should the exposure range be to maximize the level of saturation out of the negative? Like where is it best to value? If I underexpose, why I stop and pull one? Do I want full saturation? No, I don't necessarily want full saturation, but I definitely want the shadows to have a little bit of halation in it. Like, different things like that. If I'm doing skip bleach, how much? I had a cousin who worked at eFilm, Bev Wood, and like she was like the maestro of eFilm. If you ever look her up, she helped create the DI process for Old Brother with Roger.
Oh, wow.
So like when it came to color science and photochemical science, it's like she's kind of the backdoor call. Like, all right, Bev, like I'm trying to figure something out. How do I do that? You're gonna bother me with okay, here's what you do,
You know how you pioneered the DI? I need your help.
Right, exactly. Like even like when it comes to like someone like the ENR processing and whatnot, like Skip Bleach, she totally understood that. So Bev is like this catalyst to Hollywood cinematographers because she helped develop a lot of that stuff. But she would give me a lot of insight where you put that exposure value in order to have that manipulation at the end for the final print of it all. And that's what I do now. It's like where can I lace my exposures a certain way in the Sony Venice in order to have maximum control later, or to not have control, because not having control sometimes is an advantage because the magic happens. That's even how I approach the lenses. Like I don't want something as pristine as a Master Prime all the time, or like a Similux, because I want things to flare up. I won't put the matte box on the camera because I want a backlight or something to kick off with something as I pass through and resonate with the moment, possibly. It's just one of those things that that's a part of the magic and having fun. I'm not shooting a head interview like we're doing right now. It's like we're telling a narrative, we're telling an emotional story, hopefully, and I want to have fun with it. So I'd like to leave room for things to happen, visually.
Now, one of the things I was talking to someone about a week ago about this, but because of digital technology, we can perfect things that are, like a mistake on set can be fixed in post, essentially. And if we can't, then we can do VFX or we can do what have you. And it's almost gotten to the point where every mistake is removed or perfected in some way. But back in the old days, we had, happy accidents, I guess you could say. So do you leave room for happy accidents, or do you
Yeah.
for those? How
Yeah.
do you?
That's exactly to the first question you had about the lenses.
Yeah.
So then I have certain types of flares, mixed flares, different tonality of flares in the same lens. You gotta have certain types of glass that you have to request in order to make that happen. You know what I mean? Certain coatings taken off of certain elements inside of the lens to do that. You know, you gotta shoot at certain T-stops in order to have certain types of flares. But you have to go into your day knowing that. You got to go into during your prep time, you have to really get that down. And then you have to talk to your colorist about what are we doing to the color science of the camera in the final grade that will keep us on track to have some of these things that are going on. So that's why I kind of have this approach of having just a digital loader. But if I do carry a DIT, I'm like, no live grade. Why? Because I want the way the LUT is designed to have things that look, you know, a little bit off at times. So I'll design the LUT a certain way. So don't correct it. Like if things seem a bit hot, yeah, I want them hot. You know, that's what it comes down to. If things seem a little bit under, it's like, yeah, because they should be. The backlight and no fill light whatsoever in their silhouette, and they walk into something of a key later on. Like, yeah, that's what I want. While at the same time backlighting it. Like it's one of those things. Like I really want to. In my prep, I try to manipulate my my approach to leave room for the happy accidents.
Now, is there a scene or a film, or particularly a scene that was really difficult for you to shoot, but you're really happy with the outcome from your career?
Yeah, you know, it's funny. Snowfall season 3 finale had a bunch of that stuff. I would say during the scene where you see it on my reel, that's why it's up there, where the uncle comes and he discovers the massacre that's happened at what's called the Bottoms Housing Project. And it's like this steady cam that we had to end up breaking up at one point. But it worked out. It's really hard because we're doing 360 a couple of times. I'm letting all these dark black faces who have dark outfits on at night and still trying to carry the backlight and, you know, trying to carry the highlights and letting people fall under. And that was a really great dance, as tough as it was, running out of time, but holding at a bottom level of exposure, mixed color. I really enjoyed that. That was tough. And then I would say the opening of season 4, we had a big oneer that I did with Karina Evans, if you see it, season 4, episode 2. And there we had this big steady cam that went over this warehouse. Then these guys, black guys, start in a container and they're just lit by backlight, because where else is the light coming from inside of a closed door container? Then they walk out of the container into a warehouse that's barely being lit by anything. And you have a lot of silhouettes, and I have a little bit of key over the top. And I have my lead actors in all black, and they're dark-skinned black men with black hair. And yet, you know, it's like that dance of coming around, and we're seeing all these different people. They pop out of shadow, they go back into shadow. Steady cam, keep towing, then go back in. It's like, that was really tough. It was really fun. And, you know, my gaffer at the time, Justin Dixon, was, you know, freaking great. You know, he did such a good job finding the nuances of light levels that we were always trying to go after. And they kept that one fully intact. Shoot, there was one, you know what? There was one that didn't make the show in season 3, where we had a drone come across the fence, land into the drone pilot's hands, run behind the guy. We do a 360, keep running through this courtyard of the housing project. And then when the cops come in, because at first you see one person, you see the cops come in on either side, we send the drone back up all at night after the spotlight finds somebody in the courtyard. That was really tough because the drone doesn't have the same sensitivity in terms of camera and lens speed as, say, the Sony Venice. And I was using the quad, so that's an easier catch. Like the Octo, you can't really do a catch and release. But we did it. It was episode 4 of season 3. Logan Kibbins was the director and came up with this great oneer that took all night to plan, because it went from outside the housing project You followed somebody to inside the housing project. You passed off to someone else, 360 them. Went with this one cop. The one cop leads us to a door. All these other cops come around. And then when all the other cops start to come around, we go back up to look at this door that gets smashed. So that was tough. That one was tough, but they didn't keep it all intact as a one. They broke it up because there was something else happening simultaneously in the storyline. So
wow. Now I have one last question I'd like to ask everyone. We've been in this pandemic for almost, well, we're heading towards 2 years now. So right. In that time, some people get, depending on where the pandemic it is, some people are stuck inside, some people are able to go out. But because of that, people have really discovered streaming services. Is there a show or a movie you discovered over the past year that you think people should check out?
Oh man, this is a straight Jack move right here, because I watched this movie. It's two movies. I got really into Russian cinema.
Yeah.
And HBO Max has a good selection of Russian cinema, and so does Criterion. There was one movie in particular that you can watch on Criterion called Come and See.
Okay.
And who put me onto it was Roger Deakins on another talk. And I was like, he talked about it as an influence in 1917.
Yeah.
The movie is so brutal, but beautiful. Check that out. And you check out As the Cranes Fly. It's another filmmaker, Russian cinema. It's the same guys who did I Am Cuba.
Yeah.
Those two movies, Come and See and As the Cranes Fly, are absolutely stunning. Yeah. You'll realize that there's been other filmmakers watching these guys for years. I got put onto them. So I just started watching all these different Russian cinema, but it was crazy that HBO Max had them. And of course, the Criterion, I've had a couple of them. But that right there, you really love cinema, watch those two. Oh my God, it's unreal.
I totally thought you were going to talk about Tarkovsky when you said the Russian cinema.
Nah, Tarkovsky is like, sometimes it's too much, man. But at the same time, these guys, though, wait till you see the filmmaking in that. Wait till you see the portraiture work. Wait till you see the storytelling. It's really good stuff. Both are really good movies and visually just beautiful.
Well, thank you so much for letting us interview today.
Man, no problem. This is fun, Gordon. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Well, that's it for this week. Make sure to check us out at filmmakeru.com for all our latest courses, and follow us on Twitter at filmmaker_you. I want to thank you again for joining us, Tommy. And of course, our sponsors, OWC. Go to owcdigital.com for all your filmmaking needs. I'm Gordon Burkell. Thanks for watching.